Hello friends, Coach Bob with you today, and today we're going to be talking about riding with injuries and disabilities and that sort of thing. Is the Spyder the machine for you? Is a motorcycle the thing for you? Or neither? I'm going to tell you any of those answers are acceptable, and we all have to know our limitations. That's just the reality. And the older that we get, those limitations seem to be pressing a little more in the forefront for all of us, don't they? But it's not just us more mature people that we could say. It's just about anyone. You know, Coach Vic was put in a wheelchair when she was 23 years old. So someone who is newly injured, that is in their 20s, could certainly apply to them. It could apply to someone like my son who doesn't want to place himself in any greater harm's way than he already has with injuries that he might have sustained as a young man and the discomfort that's associated with riding. And we all have to think about those things. So what we want to do, we want to break this thing up into sections. We're going to talk about injuries, actual injuries that are going on right now, and the best way to handle those. And yes, there is a best way to handle those. As a coach, I'm going to share with you my findings, what I've seen, what I've discovered through coaching of what people need to do versus what we often do. And that's not always the same thing. And then we're going to talk about after we've healed from that injury, where the doctor gives us the old thumbs up, the go ahead, are we truly ready? And then we're going to talk about permanent disabilities and riding and what in particularly the Spyder has to offer for us. So the first thing we're going to talk about is an actual injury, something that happens. You know, I can speak from personal experience. I've broken many bones. I've broken ribs. I've had compound fractures. I've separated ankles. I've done all kinds of crazy things in my lifetime. Detached retinas, banged up noggin, stitches in my face, you name it, I've done it. It's a gift. And of course, Coach Vic, you know, was in a car accident when she was 23, paralyzed, T7 paraplegic. We understand injury in this house, let me tell you. But oftentimes when we get an injury, we don't want to face the truth that we have to slow down a little bit. So I'm going to share a story with you about one of my favorite motorcycle riders. And I'm going to drop a picture either right up over here, or I may even just drop it over the top of my big old fat head so you can really get a good view of it. This is the story of my favorite motorcycle racer in the world, Marc Marquez. Now, I will tell you, I want to be upfront. Coach Vic is constantly laughing at me and mocking me about how much I like Marc Marquez. She goes, it's crazy. How can you respect a guy so much? How can you like him so much? What's so great about him? And I tell her, everything. But in July of 2020, Marc Marquez was racing in Jerez and was involved in a horrible high side where he landed and broke the humerus of his right arm. Now, the humerus is this bone right up here. And although it's called the humerus, it's not humorous when you break it, if you know what I mean. It's a pretty bad break. There's a lot that goes on that you torque that bone as you are moving your arm around. And so it really is a bad bone to break. Like there were any good ones, right? So he breaks this bone. They do surgery on a Tuesday where they put a titanium plate in his arm. 2 days later, on a Thursday, he decides he wants to race again this next weekend. This was a bad decision and one that had long-term ramifications for him. Here's where it gets even crazier. In order for him to race, he had to pass a fitness test. What was the fitness test? 40 push-ups. Yeah, this guy did 40 push-ups with a freshly surgically repaired humerus with a titanium plate. Talk about pain. That is just unbelievable to me that anyone could endure that. But he did, and he raced. He didn't finish the race, and he damaged his arm. And when I say he damaged his arm, he ended up having to have a second surgery. Because what he had done, when you're riding the motorcycles that they're riding, we're talking mega horsepower. These are $1 million motorcycles. And the torque separated the screws and the plate from the bone. So they had to redo the surgery. After redoing the surgery, it wouldn't heal. So they ended up months later having to do a bone graft and do a third surgery that was like 10 hours and 8 surgeons. It was crazy what they did to this guy. Fast forward, you go through all of the off season, and we're already 2 races into the new season. And this next weekend, the 3rd race of the season, will be his first race. He's listening to the doctors. He's listening to what they're telling him. Finally, it really is a miracle that he didn't lose his arm. That's the real takeaway here. He could have lost his arm. He's 27 years old. How many times have we had an injury where we go, I can work through the pain. I can do this. And we keep going and going and going and going until we realize, I think I did more damage than the original injury caused. I've done that. I fell on my bicycle years ago. I was quite a bike racer in my younger years, and I damaged my hip. I was told to take 4 weeks off of the bike. It was one of those things where I said, it's really not that bad. I think I can ride through this. 8 months later, it hurt worse than the day I did it. And I was forced to take 6 months off. Hard-headed, just hard-headed. So I want you to understand, if you have a real injury, take the time to recover. Really take the time to recover. Listen to your doctor. Listen to them. Do what they say. Don't take matters into your own hands and go out there and hurt yourself and really set yourself back. I had a friend who damaged his rotator cuff. He got back in the gym too quick. Guess what? Here we are years later, damaged rotator cuff. Same guy, damaged his ankle, ran, wasn't really supposed to be running, shook the screws loose inside of his heel bone where they had drilled and put little plates in his heel, and those screws had to be tightened up in a second surgery and then later removed, and his ankle drained due to an abscess. Got pretty nasty. Could have lost his foot. These aren't unreasonable people. These are just people who are doing what they think is right for them, thinking that they can overcome it. Because as an athlete, we don't want to admit our frailties. And as an older man, I'm just going to be honest with you, I don't want to admit that I'm not as fast as I was. But I'm not. And I have to come to terms with those limitations and the healing process of my body when I ride. Yes, even when I ride a Spyder. So I want you to understand that that is when you're dealing with an actual injury now and you're riding a Spyder or you're riding a motorcycle or you're driving a car even for that matter. If the doctor tells you not to do it, don't push it. Now let's talk about the next level. Let's talk about when you are injured and you heal up and the doctor goes, you have the go-ahead. If you're riding a CanAm Spyder and you've had carpal tunnel surgery and the doctor gives you the go-ahead and you get on the Spyder and you go, man, within 10 minutes, my hands are hurting so bad, I can barely hold myself up. It's not time yet. Just because you have the medical go-ahead, it means that you're not going to damage your hands any worse. It doesn't mean that it's not going to hurt. It doesn't even mean that you can safely do it. It just means that you have the medical go-ahead. Quick story, I broke the 5th metatarsal in my right foot years ago out on a run, and I was told after the doctor finally gave me the go-ahead, I asked him, will I be able to run again? Because even after it was healed, it hurt so bad. I'm like, there's no way. I shouldn't be out of a cast. This thing's still wiggling around in my foot because it didn't really heal properly. And he told me without surgery, it wasn't going to. It would be something that through time it would get better, but to go out and do whatever I could stand. Yes, he was a good doctor. And I avoided the knife, and I'm glad that I did. But he told me 99 out of 100 people will never run on this injury. And then he laughed and said, but 90 of those 100 didn't run to begin with. So that's not even a variable in the equation. He goes, but of the 10 that did run, 9 won't run again. Not because they can't, but because they're not willing to endure the discomfort in order to do so. Every time I jump on that foot or I run or do something, I have a little apprehension about it. It's a little unnerving. And every now and then I'll feel that bone shift in there a little bit and it doesn't feel quite right. And I'll rub it and push everything kind of back in place. And there again, magically it's healed. Do I run on it? A little. Do I jog? Primarily jog. but it's something that I had to work through. I certainly would not have hopped on a motorcycle and took off down the road on it, even a CanAm Spyder, because that foot hurt so bad. Had something pulled out in front of me, I don't know that I could have endured the pain required to press that brake like I would have needed to. So understand that when you're injured and you are recovered and the doctor says you're good to go, if it's going to limit your ability to safely drive that machine, then you need to gradually work your way back up into it. Start walking around the block a few times. Start moving up and down the driveway. I would do what they call farmer walks, where you're holding a dumbbell in each hand and do lunges up the driveway to build that stamina in that foot again, to build the musculature in that foot that I had lost due to atrophy being in that boot for 10 weeks. So understand that when you're getting on a Spyder or when you're getting on a motorcycle, that you are exposed, and when you can't do it safely, you can really, really get hurt. So I've talked to people recently that are Spyder riders who are, I can't wait to get back on the bike. Doctor's giving me the go ahead. This is what I'm experiencing. And they ask me, what do you think, Coach? Do you think I should do it? My answer is always, you know when you can safely ride. If the doctor's giving you the go ahead, if you cannot safely ride, knowing that if something pulls out in front of you, if you don't have the physical prowess to stop, to maneuver like you did pre-injury, you're not ready to ride. Certainly not ready to ride on the road. I'm not saying you're not ready to ride at all. You may be able to get that Spyder into a parking lot and work your way through it. Train, gradually work your way back up to your riding skills or where they need to be, and then get back out on the road. But you want to take this slow and steady. Remember this, in injury, this is the absolute rule. Slow is fast, and fast is slow. If you try to get back in there fast, you are going to slow down the healing process and prolong the amount of time that you're not able to ride and enjoy your machine. There you have it. Make sure, take the time, heal up properly. Now the third group. The third group are people with permanent disabilities, like Coach Vic, for example. We know that she is a paraplegic, which means, for those not in the know, she can't use her feet. So, how can she ride a Spyder? Well, there are a couple of ways she can do it, but only one way that she can do it legally. That is to put a handbrake on the Spyder. So we would have to modify the Spyder in order for her to stop. Now that's absolutely simple thought process, right? But what if you broke your ankle and they had to fuse it, and you go, man, I can still partially use my foot, but I can't completely use my foot. I think I can stop okay on the Spyder. Would you be safer having a handbrake on there as a backup? I would say you would. I would think that would be that would be the perfect option for you. So remember, when you're doing things with a permanent disability, it's a workaround now. It's no longer, is my body going to recover so that I will be able to? Now it is, what can I do to modify the machine in order for me to accomplish what I want to do safely? I'm going to tell you, hips, back, even to a certain degree, your shoulders and elbows, when you're on the Spyder, you put a lot less torque and pressure on them than you do on a conventional two-wheeled motorcycle. The Spyder is much more forgiving, and it does give you the ability to ride. Certainly for folks who have had hip replacements and knee replacements and those sorts of things, where your big concern was putting your feet down and holding up the weight of a motorcycle. It doesn't make you less cool. It doesn't make you less awesome. It just means that you don't want to drop a motorcycle, and that's a wise decision. So a Spyder is a perfect fit for someone like that. I do want you to understand, though, when you start talking about modifications on the Spyder, for example, the big modification is the handbrake. There's a company called ISCI out of Alabama. We've talked about them before. I will be doing a video here soon on the handbrake scenario with CanAm, why I think they don't put one on there, and what the cost is to actually do it, and what the installation process looks like. We have not pulled the trigger on that yet, but we are seriously considering putting a handbrake on the Spyder for Coach Vic. But I want you to be encouraged. If you're the person recovering from surgery, if you're the person who is newly injured, if you're the person who is told you'll never ride a motorcycle again, if you're the person who's dealing with the stress and the anxiety of all of that, chances are you'll be able to ride again. It just may have to be rethought as to what machine you can ride and what modifications you have to make in order to safely do it. So I want you to think about these things, especially if you're someone who's been hurt recently. I want you to be diligent about your recovery process. I want you to get well, and I want you to enjoy your life on the Spyder or on a two-wheeled motorcycle or just generally in life. You know, if you're perusing through YouTube and you happen across this video, this will apply to anyone. So remember, slow, steady improvement. Fast is slow, slow is fast. Take your time, get strong, whether it is, from partial paralysis, a stroke, falling down, having a motorcycle accident, a car accident, a sporting accident, whatever it is, take your time, get strong, and believe that you can do it. And once you get all that done, and I know you will, I want you to do me a favor. Go out, buy the motorcycle of your dreams, eat right, take care of yourself, and remember, if you're not having fun, you are definitely doing it wrong. We'll see you on the road real soon. Now, go seize the day.